Hello everyone. Today we're going to take a closer look into the Vietnam War. My name is Mercedes Moradel and this is from my American History class. Let's start out with the question, what caused the Vietnam War? The Vietnam War was a result of the consequences following the Cold War. The causes of the Vietnam War revolve around the simple belief held by America that communism was threatening to expand all over Southeast Asia. Let's take a look at the picture to the left where it says, "The only good communist is a dead communist." This is an American holding the sign, and this was America's viewpoint at the time. The United States wanted to prevent other parts of the world from falling into the communist rule. Next, we're going to take a look at when this all took place. The war began November 1st of 1955 and lasted until April 30th, 1975. That's 20 years, one of the longest wars to date. The United States was not involved all 20 years, but only got involved early of August 1964. Let's see how. How the U.S. got involved. In August of 1964, 2 U.S. destroyers were stationed in the Gulf of Tonkin, sorry if I pronounce any of these wrong, in Vietnam, and they radioed that they had been fired upon by the North Vietnamese forces. In response to these reported incidents, the president at the time, who was Lyndon B. Johnson, requested permission from the United States Congress to increase the U.S. military presence in Indochina. China. On August 7th of 1964, Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution authorizing President Johnson to take any measures he believed were necessary to retaliate and to promote the maintenance of international peace and security in Southeast Asia, basically allowing him to act upon his powers as president of Commander-in-Chief of the Army. This resulted in Johnson and Nixon administrations getting involved into the war. Overall, let's look at who was involved. Sorry, my eye. Wait, let me just... Okay, who was involved? Anyways, the 2 main players in the war were North and South Vietnam. North being the communist and South fighting for anti-communism. The South was backed by the members of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, including the United States, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, New Zealand, Thailand, Khmer Republic, Kingdom of Laos, I believe, and Republic of China. The North Vietnam, on the other hand, was backed by communist allies because they were trying to make all of Vietnam under communist rule. The communist allies included the People's Republic of China, Soviet Union, Pathet Lao, Khmer Rouge, Cambodian Communist insurgents, and North Korea. Moving on. How this war was fought. The Vietnamese from the north used guerrilla warfare tactics, which was a little bit new to the Americans, but sometimes used by the Native Americans. Sorry, I just dropped my book. Sometimes used by the Native Americans in wars previously. Guerrilla warfare was a unique style of fighting, which used the element of surprise to defeat their opponent. As you can see in the picture I inserted, this guy's using the natural resources around him of leaves and digging a hole to hide himself from his opponent and use one of the tactics like ambushing them without being known that he was there. How did the war end? The war came to a conclusion when Richard Nixon, president at the time, issued a new program that would remove the United States from the Vietnam War. This program was called Vietnamization, and it called for South Vietnamese forces to be built up so that they could assume more responsibility for the war. The United States was heavily involved at this time, so take that into consideration. As the South Vietnamese forces became more capable, the United States forces would be withdrawn from combat and returned to the United States. Basically, they would try and fight the war more by themselves and without our help. It's just to get us out of it. The Vietnamization would not be an end to the war, but only an attempt to remove the U.S. troops. And although the troops were removed, fighting carried on until a treaty was signed in January of 1973. Taking a closer look into that treaty, the Paris Peace Accords was the treaty that signed by both the United States and North Vietnam to end the direct U.S. military combat and temporarily stop the fighting between the North and South of Vietnam. The Vietnamese did not stop fighting until 1975. To the right, you will see a picture I inserted of people protesting for the war to end. This is all over Vietnam and the United States, that they wanted the war to end and wanted peace. Who was victorious in the end? North Vietnam was victorious in the end due to regaining power and uniting the North and South under communist rule. Obviously, this was not what the U.S. wanted, because we were fighting to prevent Vietnam from becoming a communist country, but to no avail. To the left, I added a picture of some of the newspapers. This is what the newspapers at the time looked like, because the headline is "The war is over," but the caption is Saigon, I believe, is renamed Ho Chi Minh City, which was the communist ruler. Conspiracy theories? What? Yeah, there is conspiracy theories with the Vietnam War and with all these other wars. If you look at the picture on the right, it says World War I, Korea, Vietnam, World War II, and the Persian Gulf War. These conspiracies are about POW MIA, which stands for prisoners of war missing in action. Although the government kept field records of casualties and a number of soldiers fighting in Vietnam, it is believed that they left a large number of men behind, and they were abandoned in Vietnam and never accounted for. Obviously, this was a tragedy to the families, especially if the men were still alive. That is the end of my slideshow. Thank you for watching, and here are my sources.